I'm not a chief anymore. I'm a director now and will soon be promoted to vice president. After dropping out of middle school, I landed my first job at a company where my boss constantly looked down on me and eventually fired me. Today is my wedding anniversary with my wife, yet it turned out to be the worst possible reunion. After getting fired, I immediately found another job, but it seems like my condescending former boss still thinks I'm unemployed. If you really insist, I might consider rehiring you at our company. I'll be the executive vice president soon, and I can get you back in. But in return, you must swear loyalty to me. If you promise to do that, I'll give you another chance. Before I could respond, my wife spoke up to my ex-boss, who had made such a ridiculous statement. Well then, it's about time we take you and your company down. She said this with a sly smile. My name is Alex. Now working as a systems engineer. I live happily with my wife, Sarah, and we are about to celebrate our first wedding anniversary. My parents were well off, with my father being an attorney and my mother a homemaker. The reason I use a past tense is that there's a significant event in my past that marks a before and after in my life. This is because when I was in my first year of high school, my family was involved in a car accident, and I was the only one who survived. After the accident, I woke up in a hospital bed only to learn that both of my parents had passed away. Losing my parents all at once, I couldn't accept the reality and secluded myself in my room, losing any motivation to attend school, leading to my dropping out. Unable to maintain the house we had lived in for so long, I eventually had to let it go. Back then, I was unable to do anything and just spent my days in a daze. During such times, Jack, an attorney who was a friend of my father and also Sarah's dad, provided me with a lot of support. Your father was my dearest friend and a great man. Alex, you are very important to me too. Let me help you so you don't face any disadvantages, he said, taking care of various procedures on my behalf. Jack had a daughter, and she was Sarah. Alex, if there's anything I can do to help, just let me know, she said. She looked after me when I was in a state of apathy, taking care of me in various ways. Although Sarah and I used to play together as children because our fathers were friends, we gradually lost touch as we got older due to the natural distance that develops between boys and girls. Reuniting after about 10 years, I barely recognized her and embarrassingly muttered, "Who is this?" But her familiar expressions and smile reassured me, reminding me of the old times. Thanks to the support from Sarah and her family, I was eventually able to recover and start a new life. I am forever grateful to them. To begin my new life, I started looking for a job. Jack suggested, why not return to high school? I can cover the tuition if necessary, there are scholarships available, and there's also the money your parents left behind. However, I had no intention of going back to high school. I was thinking of getting a job for my future livelihood. The profession I aspired to be was an engineer. Although I had other aspirations, my current situation made them unattainable, so I had to give them up. Despite the challenges of job hunting with only a middle school diploma, I was filled with hope when I saw an advertisement on a job site for Belak Company, stating system engineer wanted, beginners welcome, seniors will kindly teach you. It's a homely workplace. Encouraged by these words, I applied to the company. I applied and was thrilled to be hired. But it turned out to be a company with terrible working conditions. Upon joining the company, I was immediately handed a book as thick as a dictionary and told, everything about the job is written in this manual, so look through it and learn. Don't leave until you understand it. I'll never forget that moment. The seniors were far from kind, expecting me to arrive an hour early, clean their desks, serve coffee, and work unpaid overtime. Although I read the thick manual, I couldn't grasp everything from it alone. When I asked for clarification, I was yelled at. I told you everything is in the manual. Seniors and supervisors blamed everything on my being a middle school graduate, lashing out at me for reasons I couldn't understand. honestly leaving me with a stomachache every day. I was hardly given any real work as a systems engineer and was stuck doing menial tasks instead. My direct supervisor, Linda, was the worst of all. From day one, she mockingly called me middle school grad and piled on unreasonable demands. I heard Linda graduated from a state university. She relentlessly dumped a seemingly endless amount of work on me. And she would do this just 5 minutes before the end of my shift. Once, I was unexpectedly given an all-nighter task with the instruction, "I need this for the first meeting tomorrow morning, so have it done by 5 a.m." Of course, this was unpaid overtime. Once, I was told, "I want coffee now, make it." So despite being in the middle of work, I hurriedly made and brought the coffee to her. However, it was deemed terrible and I was ordered to remake it multiple times. In the end, I was scolded for taking too much time and the coffee was splashed right in my face. It wasn't hot, so I managed to avoid getting seriously burned, but if it had been, I would have been in serious trouble. I was also forced to attend a drinking party by Linda, despite gently refusing and mentioning, "I'm a minor," so I was told, "The minor middle school grad can just stay in the corner," and indeed, I was only allowed to drink water in the corner. When I tried to leave, I was scolded, "Don't you dare leave on your own, middle school grad," and they made sure to collect a party fee from me. Since then, I've been terrified of attending drinking parties. However, in the same department, there was a saving grace for me. A guy named James. James joined the company after graduating from high school, and he too was referred to by Linda as high school grad. There was a time when Linda dumped more work on us, and James helped me out. But when Linda saw this, she said, "It's a waste of time for one failure to help another. If you have so much free time, I'll give you more work." And then James ended up with even more work than before. It was clear harassment. After that, James couldn't help me openly much, but he did help me a lot when the boss or Linda wasn't around. He even did some of my work and backed me up a lot. James was the only saving grace for me in that place. Then one day, James and I were called by Linda, who handed us some documents and said, "You two need to complete all this work. The deadlines are written on each cover. You must adhere to them strictly. You know what will happen if you don't meet them, right?" The amount of work we were assigned was enormous, seemingly impossible. At first glance, there were about 30 tasks. And the deadline is the day after tomorrow. Flipping through the documents, I realized more than half of them were due tomorrow. It's 6 p.m. now. Starting this late, completing more than half by tomorrow morning is impossible. There's no way we can finish this. This is unreasonable. There's no way we can. Both James and I tried to protest to Linda, but she just said, "It's not about whether you can't, you have to do it. If you don't finish, you're fired. Good luck, you useless buddies." With that, Linda left. This is impossible. James and I were crushed by despair, with no hope of anyone else helping us. I couldn't imagine other colleagues offering their help. Having hardly done any real work as a systems engineer before, being suddenly tasked with this job was overwhelming. "Well, let's just do what we can," James said, picking up the stack of documents. "Jer, let's give it our best shot." With a forced smile, we decided to start with the tasks to next morning. I tried my best to understand the thick manual I received on my first day while working on the tasks. We worked desperately, continuing even after everyone else had left, and before we knew it, morning came. The sunlight shining through the windows was blinding. "So, did you manage to complete them?" Linda asked us first thing in the morning. We couldn't finish everything. It was an expected outcome. James and I couldn't complete all the work. I'd like to know if anyone could manage that amount of work in one night. Surely, even Linda, who assigned it, would find it impossible. "Well then, you'll have to take responsibility. You're both fired as of today." What? Isn't it obvious? You couldn't do your job properly. We have no need for such incompetence, especially from a high school and middle school grad. We don't need low-educated people here, she said. Wait a minute. That amount was impossible. Linda, you knew that, right? Who do you think you're talking to? It's your fault for not being able to do your job. But that's just. Despite our back and forth with Linda, we couldn't win against her, and we were indeed fired. With people like Manager Dean and Director Kimberly taking a hands-off approach, Linda's word was enough to get us fired in this company. After leaving the company with James, I couldn't help but break down and cry. I couldn't stop the tears from guilt. James, I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. Alex, it's hard to understand you when you're crying like this, James said with a wry smile. It's all because of me. No, that was all Linda's doing. Well, it's done now. Leaving that terrible company might just be for the best. James offered me tissue as he smiled broadly, his grin seemingly deserving of a sound effect. Exhausted from the all-nighter, we talked about confronting President Thompson directly the next day at work, but ended up going home and sleeping soundly. However, that evening, I received a call from Mr. Thompson, the president, who simply said, "You're all fired after what you did. Don't expect any severance pay," before hanging up. After that, no matter how many times I called, I couldn't get through. I was probably blocked. Honestly, at that moment, I was beyond caring about that. So when James suggested, "Let's have a farewell party for us," and came over to my place the next day, I couldn't think about the future at all. As we ate and talked, James mentioned, "By the way, Alex, I've been thinking about starting my own company. Would you help me out? Be my first employee?" He put his arm around my shoulder as he said this. James was already looking towards the future. Impressive. Seeing him like that made me realize I couldn't keep moping around. "Yes, please let me know if there's anything I can do." I figured I had nothing left to lose, so why not give it my all working for James? And James really did start his own company. We continued as systems engineers, the same as our previous job. Despite numerous competitors, we managed to find work and gradually increase our clientele. Now we have many clients and are busy working. And Sarah, who had always been there for me during the hard times after my parents' accident and at work, became my girlfriend a while back. It's a fond memory when she said, "I'll support you, Alex," and we laughed because it's usually the other way around. Since James' company was doing well, I proposed to Sarah. She accepted, and we were able to get married. I feel incredibly happy now, a stark contrast to my lowest moments. Today is our first wedding anniversary. To celebrate, we booked a famous Japanese restaurant in the area. The highlight of this restaurant is the large teppan grill in front of the counter seats where the chef cooks the ingredients. The chef's performance while cooking is popular, making it a sought-after reservation. We had to book half a year in advance. Sarah was also saying, "I'm really looking forward to it," so I was truly relieved that we were able to get a reservation. Then, Sarah and I went to the restaurant at our reservation time and were led to prime seats right in the middle of the counter. "Wow, these are the best seats," Sarah said with a smile, and I agreed, "Yeah, we're lucky." We ordered wine and toasted. Right in front of us, Chef Michael was already grilling some Wagyu beef, and the aroma was enticing. As we sipped on wine and savored the food, enjoying a pleasant conversation, a voice from behind suddenly asked, "Hey, aren't you the middle school grad guy?" I instinctively turned around, and there was Linda. Honestly, my first thought was, I should have known. She was the only one who ever called me a middle school grad. "Linda." "Knew it. What are you doing here?" Linda approached as she spoke. As usual, just having Linda in front of me made my body tense up momentarily. It might as well be considered a reflex. "How have you been, Linda?" "Me. I'm here for a business dinner. I just happened to see a familiar face on my way back from the restroom. Then, Linda's expression turned condescending, and she smirked. As always, the middle school grad looks so gloomy. I'll just ignore her. She'll give up eventually. That's what I decided, and chose to ignore her. I could see Michael grilling abalone now. It looked delicious too. By the way, after you left our company, were you able to find a job anywhere? Though, as a middle school grad, I suppose you hardly have any income, she taunted. Here's your abalone. Please enjoy, the chef interrupted. This looks delicious. Let's eat, Sarah. Yes, let's eat. Ignoring Linda, Sarah and I enjoyed abalone. Wow, it's so chewy. Seemingly irked by our disregard, Linda continued her provocations. Despite being a middle school grad, you can afford to dine at such a high-end place. Is this lady your wife? At that remark, Sarah glanced at Linda. Are you being supported by your wife? How does that make you feel as a man? Well, I guess it can be helped since you're a middle school grad. Linda laughed mockingly. Sarah, unable to hold back, started to stand up, saying, "Excuse me, what have you been saying all this time?" But I stopped her. Sarah, let's just ignore her. Mistaking our silence for defeat, Linda jeered. Can't come back with a response. How pitiful. Linda, I just don't want to stoop to your level. I've always thought that despite your education, you lack common sense, I retorted deliberately. What? Linda exploded in anger. Who do you think you are, talking back to me like that, you middle school grad? People like you shouldn't even be in places like this. You ruin the atmosphere. Oh, she's really polished her insults, I thought. Hey Michael, kick these guys out right now. I'm the one saying it. Do it quickly. Suddenly put on the spot, Michael stopped grilling the lobster and looked bewildered, saying, Me. I think that's a natural reaction. Michael, please continue with the lobster, I requested. Okay. He replied and resumed his cooking. The aroma of lobster filled the air. I am the next vice president of BLAC. You should listen to me. Linda raised her voice even more. BLAC was the company I used to work for. Linda, the next vice president. I was genuinely surprised and asked her to clarify. Yes, I'm not just a chief anymore. I'm a director, and thanks to you and James, I'm going to be vice president, she boasted. Thanks to me and James. Then she revealed a shocking truth. The reason James and I were fired wasn't just because of the delay in our work that day, but because Linda had framed us for misconduct, claiming we were the ones involved. I altered some numbers in the data you guys worked on and reported, Chris, they're tampering with the data. They praised me for noticing. It was like I blew the whistle. Thanks to that, my reputation improved, and I climbed the corporate ladder, she bragged. That's not something to brag about. I was appalled. It was practically a confession. She admitted to wrongdoing and pinning the blame on us. If you insist, I might rehire you at our company. Now that I'm going to be vice president, I could arrange for your reemployment. Linda suddenly offered, stunned. All I could manage was a baffled, In return, work tirelessly under me and swear your loyalty. If you promise that, I'll hire you again, Linda said, laughing haughtily. I was about to retort, I'd have to refuse that, but in that moment, Sarah, who should have been next to me, was already standing in front of me. Linda, you're going to be the next vice president. That's great. Now we can finally take down you and your company. Sarah said this with a bright smile. What? Take me down? My company? Yes, I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. Sarah said, handing Linda a business card from her case, still looking puzzled. The business card should read Attorney Sarah Parker. An attorney? Yes, I'm Sarah Parker, an attorney specializing in labor-related issues, such as unpaid wages, illegal working hours, and harassment from superiors, to name a few. Really? Linda's complexion visibly worsened as she spoke. Perhaps she was aware of the terrible things she had done to us. Actually, I've been consulted by an employee from your company as well, Sarah continued. What? They mentioned being verbally abused by a supervisor named Linda. We're currently considering legal action. Who would dare to consult about that? Linda blurted out in panic. I can't disclose that, it's confidential information. Kind of like internal whistleblowing, isn't it? Sarah replied, mimicking Linda's earlier tone. Sarah then took out a small voice recorder from her pocket. By the way, I've recorded our entire conversation. I'm not sure if that will serve as evidence, but you did admit to misconduct and pushing Alex and James out of their jobs. I knew Sarah always carried a voice recorder as part of her job, but I never imagined it would come in handy like this. Well, Linda was at a loss for words, her earlier bravado gone. We were considering legal action, as I mentioned earlier, but actually, the documents have already been sent. By now, they should be reaching President Thompson of the company. I wonder if he's turning blue in the face, Sarah said cheerfully. The moment Sarah cheerfully said that, a ringtone blared from Linda's pocket. In a panic, Linda pulled out her cell phone, and her face turned even paler upon seeing the caller ID. Likely Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson, are you not going to answer that? Could it be that the documents actually arrived? Teased by Sarah, Linda hesitantly tapped on her cell phone screen. Linda, where are you? Get back to the office now. President Thompson's angry voice was audible to all of us. After that, Linda rushed off somewhere, and Sarah and I resumed our seats. Sorry for the disturbance, Michael, I apologized. No worries, it's been quite an ordeal for you. Shall I continue with the next dish? Michael offered with a friendly smile. We responded with yes please. I couldn't help but wonder about Linda, who claimed to be at the restaurant for a business dinner. I hope she was all right, although it hardly mattered in the grand scheme of things. When I later told James, the president of our current company, about the incident, he laughed. So you finally got back at Linda. I also informed him about Linda's false accusations against us. Seriously, James was astonished. Yes, Sarah recorded her confession, so you can listen to it later, I suggested. That woman, how dare she? James muttered, his eyes filled with anger. Then, James said, Alex, I've been thinking about something. Are you in? That look on his face reminded me of when he first proposed starting a business together. I wondered what he had in mind this time. I'll follow you, James, I responded. James's plan was to buy shares in the company we used to work for and attend the shareholders' meeting to demand the removal of President Thompson and his team. If we explain Linda's misdeeds to the shareholders, don't you think they'll agree to demand Thompson's removal? James speculated. There's a possibility, especially since Linda, who's about to become vice president, has already been reported in legal documents, I agreed. Wasting no time, James and I purchased shares and successfully made contact with the shareholders. We recounted all the things Linda had done to us. We also had plenty to say about Kimberly and Mr. Thompson, who were considering promoting such a person to executive vice president while turning a blind eye to her actions. The fact that an attorney was already involved added credibility to our claims. Many shareholders were appalled by the company's unethical practices. An emergency shareholders meeting was called, resulting in the dismissal of President Thompson and his executives. Our company, led by James as the president, then acquired the company to protect the remaining employees. Linda was ousted and lost her job as a result. After being fired, Linda suddenly showed up at our company one day and said, I was just stressed out working for such a toxic company. That's all it was, just taking it out a little on you juniors, right? You'll forgive me, won't you? I could even consider working at your place, James, and for some reason, she had the audacity to say this from a position of superiority, clinging to James for a chance. But James dismissed her. Linda, you're just reaping what you sowed, and promptly sent her away. Unable to find employment elsewhere due to her personality, Lindy ended up working at a nightclub, where she reportedly wasn't very successful. Now, I hear she's struggling even to eat, and there are rumors she's working at a construction site. It's understandable that working in such a terrible company would lead to stress. I worked in that environment myself, so I know. But no matter how tough it was, taking it out on others is wrong. What Linda did to us was definitely harmful. I hope someday she realizes that. Sarah, thank you so much, I said to her, grateful that the issue with Linda and the company was finally settled. I always seem to be relying on you, Sarah. It makes me feel a bit pathetic, I said, chuckling. Not at all. You're not pathetic, Sarah reassured me with a smile. It's because of you that I am who I am today. Because of me. You might not remember this, but Sarah then shared a story from when we were in elementary school. Sarah had been harassed by her classmates when she was in elementary school. The harassment began over something trivial. Her classmates found out her father was an attorney. Sarah's family must be rich. That's why she acts so high and mighty. Somehow, such talk spread around the class, and attitude towards Sarah worsened. But you were always different, treating me the same as ever. In the end, even though he was in a different class, you said, "Don't you dare treat Sarah like that. My dad's an attorney too. If you're going to harass her, then harass me too." Yeah, I remember that. Even though it was a different class, I barged into the room and got scolded. At that time, Sarah was so obviously downcast, I just had to pry and listen. Hearing her say everyone assumed she was rich just because her dad was an attorney, I remember immediately going to Sarah's class. The day after you stood up for me, the bullying started to decrease, and eventually, it stopped altogether. Because of you, I wanted to become someone who could stand up to wrongdoing, which led me to pursue law, Sarah said, blushing. I felt embarrassed too, hearing her say that. Maybe that's because of my dad, I suggested. Your dad? Yeah, he was also an attorney, right? He always stood firm against what was wrong. Maybe his influence rubbed off on me. My dad lived by the creed "Be fair, just, and uphold righteousness," and that motto was framed in his study. I guess I was full of a sense of justice because of my dad, I mused. I admired that about you, Alex. That's why I wanted to be there for you, especially after your parents' accident, Sarah shared. I didn't know that. I don't remember much from that time. But I clearly remember being supported by Sarah and Jack. But it really frustrated me to see Alex, who had finally got back on his feet, suffering in such a toxic company. I wanted to do something to help. When I was working at Bilac, Sarah, who was a college student at the time, continued, saying how helpless she felt not being able to do anything. Sarah's father, Jack, was very busy and, being a criminal defense attorney, wasn't always available for consultation. Besides, even if something had been said to me at the time, I don't think I would have had the capacity to deal with it. That's how on edge I was every day back then. One day, if you ever decided to take action against that company, I wanted to be strong enough to help. So I decided to become an attorney to gain the strength to fight. In the end, I feel like all my motivation comes from you. Sarah's unexpected words almost brought me to tears. I had no idea she thought so highly of me. It was completely unexpected. Sarah, thank you so much. In the end, I couldn't help but cry. Actually, I've always had this dream of becoming an attorney like my dad. If I had been living a normal life, I would have wanted to go to law school. Really, I had no idea. It was natural for her to be surprised, as this was something I had never shared with Sarah before. But after my parents' accident and dropping out of high school, that dream seemed unattainable. I've been so focused on working hard that I forgot I even had that dream, I reflected. Hearing Sarah's story reminded me that I once had such aspirations too. What do you want to do, Alex? It's not too late to chase your dream of becoming an attorney, Sarah encouraged. Maybe I could take the GED and go to university, but right now, I find my work as a systems engineer more appealing, I mused. After leaving that terrible company, James reintroduced me to the world of systems engineering, teaching me everything from scratch. At my previous company, I was supposed to be trained for work but ended up doing mostly basic tasks. So it was only after joining James' company that I truly got to build systems myself. And that's when I fully realized the thrill of creating systems. The immense satisfaction I felt when a system I designed worked exactly as intended was unforgettable. I'm sure James would support me if I decided to pursue law now, saying, "Go for it." He's that kind of a supportive person. But the truth is, I want to support James, who has always been there for me. Moreover, I take great pride in my work as a systems engineer. So, I'll carry on with your dream of being an attorney, Alex, and continue to make strides forward, Sarah said with a laugh. Jer, keep shining for both of us, I responded, laughing along. Our company, under James' leadership, has grown significantly since acquiring our former employer. We work every day with a motto, not to achieve results through overwork, but to work comfortably and enable each person to maximize their potential. Tom, who joined us from that company, was astonished by this philosophy, exclaiming, "We don't have to overdo it." Upon hearing that, James said, "I definitely don't want you to overdo it. Nobody would be happy with that," which brought me to tears. Apparently, he had been getting by on energy drinks every day. Indeed, Tom's dark circles were quite severe. Thanks to this philosophy, the work environment in our company is comfortable, and our performance is on the rise. It seems Tom's dark circles are even starting to fade. I'm determined to continue working hard to support James. I feel blessed by the people around me throughout my life. Sarah, James, my parents, and Jack, they've all been my support. Despite encountering someone like Linda, I've lived honestly without straying onto the wrong path. I believe that's why I'm not facing an end like Linda's. They say that others are a mirror reflecting oneself. I believe that when you do good things for others, good things will surely come back to you. Conversely, if you do bad things will return to you. I'm reminded once again of my desire to be sincere with everyone I encounter.